Hey guys, welcome back. Today I'm going to be talking about 5 bass greats that inspired me, so stay tuned. If you're new to this channel, do me a huge favor, go ahead and press that like and subscribe button. Be sure to turn on my notifications. So I wanted to do something a little different today in this lesson. It's not so much a lesson as it is me kind of giving you a background of some of the people that I listen to. I'm finding out more and more as I begin to talk to different students and different players that there are a lot of bass players that some of you guys haven't heard about. So I felt it would be only fair for me to give you some of the people who really inspired me. Now this list is in no particular order. It's just over the years, certain players kind of inspired different parts, different aspects of me. This is only 5 people. I'm not saying that these are the only 5 you should listen to, or these are only 5 that inspired me. These are just 5 that I picked from a huge list, and I wanted to just kind of share these influential players with you. All right, so first on the list is Mr. Victor Wooten. He needs no introduction. Watch this. So I think I was introduced to Victor Wooten initially by Mr. Nate Holloman, a good friend of mine, who basically put me on to solo bass playing and kind of finding out about that whole world of solo bass playing. Man, that had to be at least 2002, somewhere in there that I was introduced to his music, and I was completely mind blown because at that point I'd never heard anybody do anything like that on the bass guitar. That completely opened my world up and shifted my thinking and started having me to see some of the possibilities that are available on bass. And I do feel like Victor has played a huge role in what I'm and many other bass players are doing now, because had it not been for him and many others, we wouldn't have thought to do some of the things that we're actually doing on bass. So if you're not familiar with who Victor Wooten is, he has several albums out on his own. You can search him on iTunes, Google, wherever you get your music from. He's also a band member with Bela Fleck and the Flecktones, which deserves its own video. But for the sake of time, you can look that up at your own convenience. All right, so next on my list is Mr. Daryl Freeman. Have a look. for me, Daryl is more of a staple player in terms of gospel music. And it's just a real quick story. When I moved to Atlanta in 2006, around that time, Daryl was like one of the #1 players, and still is one of the #1 players in gospel music. And at that time, he was basically kind of dominating the scene as it pertains to gospel bass. There were some other honorable mentions as well, but just for the sake of this, Daryl was like one of the #1 players. He lived here in Atlanta, and I had the opportunity to hear him a few times. But many of you might not know this, but Daryl was actually the bass player for the church that I would later start playing at. And once Daryl left, I came in right behind him. So after coming in behind Daryl, I was already familiar with who he was. But after coming into that spot and have to somewhat fill his shoes, I felt like I really had to play catch up. And me just kind of knowing what that band had been used to, the type of sound they had been used to, I felt it was important for me to really study him, not to become a copycat, but to really kind of study the way he played, the way he approached the music, so I could do that platform justice. He had been there many years before I got there, so I wanted to make sure that nothing was missing when I came on the scene, because this was a mega ministry, a really big church, a really prominent church in the gospel community. At that time, it was really huge. They were on TV and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, to say the least, there was a lot of things that I had to learn really fast. So I did a lot of studying of Daryl Freeman. You could find him on many albums playing for some of the top names in gospel, people like Marvin Sapp and many others. And even to this day, you'll still find him on a lot of albums. So I really dug into listening to him, and I think more so from understanding gospel and how to approach modern gospel, that really gave me a different understanding of the bass. So I personally felt like if I wanted to really up my game and really become a staple gospel player, then I needed to be studying some of the top players, and Daryl happened to be one of those players. So even now to this day, if you're looking to grow and learning more modern gospel stuff, I would recommend that you do go back and study Daryl Freeman. So be sure to look him up. Some of these people you can look up on allmusic.com. They don't always list all of the records that they played on, but a lot of times you can find a good bit of the stuff. So you can start there if you just want a discography of some of the work he's done as well. So next up is Thadeus Trivet. Have a look.
Listen, sometimes I feel like it's just too hard for me to understand. Just a minute. When I ask for help, it seems like no one there to lend.
So I was initially introduced to Thadeus Trivet listening to the group Ty Trivet and GA. And when I tell you this dude was on another planet as it relates to being very soulful, being very creative, they were doing things that were out of the box. And it was probably around, man, this had to be 2004 when I was listening to Thadeus, 2003, 2004. And just listening to this dude really changed my perspective. I think Ty Trivet and GA really changed the culture of gospel music. They kind of introduced something to gospel that most of us weren't used to, this neo-soul kind of movement that was going on. They kind of implemented it into gospel. They weren't the only ones that were doing it, but mainstream, they were a group that like really made it popular in gospel music. So I would say Thadeus was really instrumental in helping me to develop some soulful stuff in gospel music. Not completely, because there were other honorable mentions like Pino Palladino, other people that I listened to, but as far as gospel was concerned, Thadeus really set the bar. If anybody's familiar with the shouts and the gospel bumps, Ty Trivet and GA were notorious for coming up with the most creative shouts and that kind of thing. So if you want to learn a little bit more about soulful bass playing and gospel music, how it kind of morphed in the early 2000s, be sure to check out Ty Trivet and GA, where you can hear Thadeus Trivet playing the bass and coming up with some amazing bass lines. All right, so next up is Ollie Burbridge. Check this out. Alright, so I know that was ridiculous. So just based off that alone, I drove 3 hours one way to hear this guy play, and I kid you not, when he played his warm-up, I was satisfied. I mean, he did his sound check on his bass, and it was so amazing, so mind-blowing. I was satisfied. I mean, I drove 3 hours, and what he did for his sound check, I could have went home and been good for the entire night. I think I went to hear him that night. He had a band at that time that was called O'Teal and the Peacemakers, and they were playing in Oxford, Mississippi. I drove from Alabama all the way over to hear O'Teal, and I had been introduced to his music probably a few months earlier prior to hearing him in person, and just being able to hear him in person versus what I was hearing on the albums and everything. Not to say what I was hearing from videos and albums wasn't already good, but when I heard him in person, it completely blew my mind, and it really opened my mind up as far as thinking melodically and thinking harmonically. O'Teal hears a whole nother way. I know that's bad English, but this dude is on another planet with the way he hears music. So I encourage you to check out Ollie Burbridge. I think he plays for Grateful Dead, something like that. But for sure, he has solo records. He has music with O'Teal and the Peacemakers. So be sure to look up Ollie Burbridge as well. Okay, so last but not least on my list is Mr. Jimmy Haslet. Take a listen. So obviously I was introduced to Jimmy Haslet by listening to the Yellow Jackets. If any of you guys are not familiar with the Yellow Jackets, go buy all of them. Matter of fact, all these people I've listed today, go get some music that they played on. Do yourself a favor as a bass player if you haven't heard them, and go and listen to these people. Jimmy, his choice of notes and his choice of phrasing is just, it's hard to explain and it's hard to describe it, but something about how Jimmy played really connected with me. And it's the weirdest thing, even though the Yellow Jackets is a jazz fusion band, it has this gospel type of flair to it when they do certain things, and I guess that might have been the thing that kind of pulled me into listening to them as opposed to listening to other jazz or jazz fusion groups. And man, it was just this other kind of thing. And Jimmy has his way of phrasing, even when he's playing fretless. It's just this way that he phrases. It's just, it blows my mind. And he has this thing where it feels like he's singing when he's playing. Not everybody does that. I know some bass players who are very good, but some guys are very mechanical. There's just nothing wrong with that. But Jimmy has this thing, this touch, and really all of the solo bass players that I've listed today, Victor, Jimmy, and O'Teal, all of them have this touch when they're playing. They have this singing element that really stands out to me, and it's really been instrumental to me in helping me kind of develop my sound over the years, pulling a little here, pulling a little there, and just seeing what I can implement into my own playing. So I encourage you guys to do that. Many of these guys that I mentioned today, I've probably transcribed at least something from all of these guys and added it to my playing to help to develop my own sound. Now we know that we all have this unique fingerprint when it comes to creating our own sound. And actually I heard this idea from Victor Wooten in an interview that he did recently, talking about finding your own sound. It's like you really don't have to find your own sound. It's really about being yourself. Because even if you played the exact solo that Jimmy Haslet, Ollie Burbridge, or Victor Wooten, any of those guys, if you played their exact solo, you're not gonna sound like them. It's gonna sound similar, but it's gonna have your influence on it. It's gonna have your fingerprint. It's hard to copy someone's fingerprint because all of those things are unique to them, unique to their experiences, unique to them completely. That's what gave them the ability to do what they do the way that they do it. So, you know, listen to these players, pull as much as you can pull That's the biggest thing I always try to tell my students. Listen to as much stuff as you can. Get in the conversation, join the conversation. Don't only limit it to listen to bass players, but it does help you to put things in the proper context and put things in the proper perspective by listening to these things and being inspired and always trying to grow. So yeah, guys, these are just 5 players who have inspired me over the years and who've helped me to grow and develop my own personal sound as I'm on my own journey. And I hope that you can take something away from this video and maybe listen to a few of these players. Perhaps they'll inspire you in the same way that they inspired me, and maybe more, who knows. Again, hope you guys enjoyed it, and be sure to turn on my notifications and press that subscribe button if you hadn't already done so. And I will see you guys on the next video. I'm out. Peace.